The moment Deputy Miller stepped out of his SUV, he felt it. Something was off. Titan, his canine partner, wasn't acting right. The Belgian Malinois' ears shot up, his body tensing as if he had sensed something no one else could. And then, without warning, he began barking urgently, straining on his lead as if trying to break free. "Titan, what is it, boy?" Miller asked, bewildered. But Titan didn't listen. Before the deputy could react, Titan broke free and sprinted toward the crumbling marina docks, barking louder and more desperately with every stride. Something was off. Terribly off. Miller followed, still bewildered until he heard it. A cry high-pitched, frightened a child. His blood ran cold. Titan was already ahead, barking furiously as if trying to warn him about something no human could see. And then Miller froze. A little boy no older than 4 was chained to a pier, piling, crying, shaking, unable to move. And behind him, far out on the water, a storm surge, its whitecaps churning, its powerful waves growing larger with every passing second. Miller screamed for backup, but Titan didn't wait. He shot forward like a blur, racing toward the boy with desperate urgency. "Why was he there?" Miller whispered. "Who would do something so monstrous? And how did Titan sense him from so far away?" And the truth behind who put him there stunned the entire sheriff's department. Stay with us because this incredible story will leave you absolutely shocked. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The afternoon sun had begun its descent when Deputy Miller stepped out of the precinct with Titan trotting at his side. Their routine patrol usually began quietly, checking the waterfront, walking past the abandoned marina and scanning the surrounding salt marshes. But today felt different. Titan wasn't his usual focused self. His ears were pinned forward, his nose twitching as if he had caught a scent on the wind that made his entire body tense. Miller's frowned, tightening his grip on the lead. "Easy, boy. What is it?" But Titan didn't slow. He pulled harder, something he almost never did unless the situation was critical. His paws dug into the sand as he dragged Miller toward the far end of the marina, toward the old wooden piers that hadn't been used safely for years. The deputy's heartbeat picked up, sensing that Titan was tuned into something urgent, something invisible to human eyes, but unmistakable to a trained K9. The sea breeze carried nothing but the cry of gulls and the faint, salty creak of the pylons groaning under the tide. Yet Titan remained fixated. He sniffed the ground with growing intensity, circling, pausing, then jolting forward again with a sharp bark that echoed across the empty docks. Miller felt a strange chill crawl down his spine. "What's going on, partner?" He crouched beside the dog, watching Titan's body language. The Belgian Malinois wasn't alerting to narcotics. He wasn't indicating contraband. This was different. This was instinct. Raw, urgent instinct. Titan kept looking down the isolated pier, ears flicking toward a direction Miller couldn't see anything in. Suddenly, Titan barked again, loud, sharp, commanding. Then he lunged forward with such force that the lead nearly slipped from Miller's hand. "Titan, hey, slow down!" But Titan didn't listen. For the first time in months, the dog completely broke routine. Miller followed, trying to keep pace as Titan veered off the sandy path and onto the docks. Nose low, tail stiff. The deputy's boots thudded loudly behind him, each step echoing with a deepening sense of dread. The pier stretched endlessly into the distance, vanishing behind a bend cloaked in sea fog. The wind shifted, carrying a faint vibration-like sound, something Miller couldn't quite identify, but Titan reacted to instantly. The dog froze. His ears shot up. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Miller's breath caught. Something was out there, something serious. Titan took a step forward, then another. And in that moment, Deputy Miller realized this wasn't just a strange afternoon. Titan was about to lead him to something terrifying, something life-changing, something he would never forget. Titan's sudden stillness sent a ripple of unease down Deputy Miller's spine. The dog stood like a statue on the wooden planks, every muscle locked, his gaze fixed toward the thick wall of fog where the pier disappeared. Miller listened, straining to hear whatever had captured Titan's senses. But at first there was nothing. Only the soft whisper of wind brushing through tall seagrass and the distant clang of a buoy far beyond the marina. Then a sound, barely audible but sharp enough to slice through the quiet afternoon. A cry, a small, trembling, high-pitched cry. Miller stiffened. "Titan, did you hear that too?" The Belgian Malinois answered with a short, urgent bark, then bolted forward, pulling Miller down the pier. The sound came again, this time clearer, echoing faintly between the pylons like a trapped echo begging to be heard. It was unmistakably the cry of a child. Miller's pulse quickened. "Oh God!" He broke into a run, letting Titan guide him. The dog's paws pounded the wooden planks with determined speed, his tail low, his ears pinned forward. Now the cries grew louder, more frantic, carrying a note of terror that made the hairs on Miller's arms stand on end. They rounded the first bend. Nothing. Only rotting planks stretching endlessly ahead. Another bend. Still nothing. But the cries kept coming, and each one grew more desperate. Miller's boots clattered against the wet wood as he sprinted faster. "Hang on, we're coming!" he shouted, hoping whoever was crying could hear him. The pier vibrated faintly beneath his feet, not just from his running, but from something else. Something distant, yet powerful. Titan skidded to a stop again, nose pressed to the wood. He sniffed violently, zigzagging across the pier until he suddenly jerked his head toward the right side, where tall reeds swayed. Miller held his breath. Titan barked again, this time a warning bark, a desperate bark. And then the cry came again, but not from far away, from just ahead. Miller pushed through the reeds, his heart hammering so loudly he could hear it in his ears. "Please don't let it be what I think." Titan shot forward, letting out a sharp howl that echoed down the pier. And that's when Miller saw a small, quivering shape in the distance. Something tiny, something fragile, something sitting directly at the pier's edge. His blood ran cold. There was a child on the pier, and his screams were getting weaker. Whatever they were about to face was far worse than he imagined. Titan sprinted ahead, his paws kicking up spray as he charged down the pier, barking with a frantic urgency Miller had never heard before. The deputy pushed harder, breath burning in his chest, legs pumping as he fought to keep up. The cry grew clearer, broken, terrified, the helpless wail of a child who had already given up hope. Then Miller stumbled to a halt. His heart nearly stopped. There, sitting directly on the cold, wet wood, was a little boy no older than 3 or 4. His small wrists were chained to a thick piling with a rusty chain that dug into his skin. His ankles were bound, his shirt torn, his face streaked with tears. He rocked helplessly, screaming for someone, anyone, to help him. "Dear God," Miller whispered, his voice cracking. Titan didn't hesitate. The Belgian Malinois rushed to his side, sniffing him frantically, whining as if trying to comfort him. But the boy screamed louder the moment he saw the deputy. His voice shook with pure terror. "Please, please get it off. Please," he sobbed, twisting his small body against the chains. Miller felt his throat tighten. Hey, little man. It's okay. I'm here now," he said softly, dropping to his knees. His hands shook as he reached for the lock. "We're going to get you out, I promise." But Titan suddenly jerked his head up, ears shooting straight. He growled, a deep, throaty warning. Miller froze. What? What is it, boy? Titan stepped to the edge of the pier, eyes fixed on the horizon. Miller followed his gaze, squinting against the sun. At first he saw nothing but blurry heat waves rippling over the water. Then, a faint vibration trembled beneath his boots. He felt it before he saw it. The waves churned, the water swelled, and then a massive wave crested far out in the bay. Miller's stomach dropped. A storm surge, a fast one heading straight for them. No, 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 no! Miller spun around, inspecting the boy's chains. They were thick, double-locked, professionally secured. Someone hadn't just left him here. They had placed him here on purpose. Hold still, little man. I'm going to lift you. Okay, he said urgently. But the little boy shook violently. I can't move. Titan barked sharply, circling Miller and the boy as the wave began to build. Its crest curled through the water, small at first, then growing, stretching, swelling into a gray wall of death, speeding toward them. The rumble became a roar. Miller's hands trembled as he pulled at the lock. It wouldn't budge. He grabbed his bolt cutters, snapping at the chain. Links strained, but too slowly. The wave's roar grew again, louder this time, shaking the pier. The boy screamed. Titan barked desperately. Miller's cutters slipped, but then he grabbed the chain with both hands and yanked with all the strength left in him. One link broke, then another. Then the final link snapped, just as the surge thundered toward them. They had seconds left, only seconds, and the real nightmare was just beginning. The pier shook so violently that Deputy Miller felt the vibrations reverberate through his knees. The wave crested high above the water ahead, its massive wall thundering toward them with unstoppable force. Its roar screamed across the open bay, loud, piercing, warning them that time was over. Miller wrapped his arms around the little boy, lifting him from the piling, but his bound legs tangled beneath him. He cried out in pain as he tried to hold on to him. Please don't let it hit me, he wailed, burying his tear-soaked face into his chest. I won't, I promise. Miller shouted back, though fear choked his voice. He could feel him trembling, tiny, fragile, terrified. He tightened his grip, but the moment he stepped backward, he stumbled on an uneven wooden plank. His foot slipped. He nearly fell. Titan barked sharply, leaping to his side before circling around them. He growled at the oncoming wall of water, spray, and thunder, as if he could intimidate the monstrous wave into stopping. Miller forced himself up, heart hammering painfully. The surge was close now, too close. The pier trembled violently, and a cold mist blasted ahead of the wave. Miller knew that even if he jumped off the pier, the undertow alone could drag them back underneath the wreckage. Come on, he muttered desperately. But the boy clung too tightly, his feet still partially tied. He couldn't balance properly, his muscles strained under his weight. The roar grew deafening. Titan suddenly sprinted ahead, barking wildly at the wave, then ran back to Miller, nudging his leg, urging him toward the shoreward side. Miller understood instantly. Okay, this way. He staggered toward the left side of the pier, where the structure connected to a rocky embankment. He had to make the jump. No other chance. If he hesitated even half a second, they'd be crushed. The wave's roar blasted again. The white water consumed the pier, flooding the entire area in blinding spray. Hold on, Miller yelled. The boy screamed and squeezed his eyes shut. Titan dashed alongside them, barking non-stop, matching Miller's pace as if trying to push him faster. The force from the wave hit them like a freight train. 5 seconds. 4. 3. Miller took one final step, then lunged off the pier with the boy in his arms. The world exploded into motion. They tumbled onto the rocks, rolling down the embankment as the wave slammed past them with a roar so loud it felt like it tore the sky open. Water blasted into the air. The ground shook with the force of an earthquake. The boy sobbed uncontrollably, clinging to Miller's collar. Titan slid down beside them, panting hard, eyes wide and locked onto the wave until the last of the surge thundered by, and then finally, silence, broken only by the little boy's shaky whisper. "You came! You really came!" Miller wasn't ready for what he said next. Not even close. The echo of the passing wave still vibrated in the air when Miller slowly lifted his head, gasping for breath. His hands shook violently, adrenaline pumping through his veins as he looked down at the little boy curled against him. His face was buried in his chest, and his shoulders trembled with each sob. It's okay, he whispered, brushing sand from his hair. "You're safe now?" But the boy didn't answer. He only cried harder, his small hands, still partially tied, clenching the fabric of his uniform like he was clinging to life itself. Titan pressed his nose to his cheek, whining softly as if trying to tell him he was there too. He flinched at first, then slowly reached his tiny fingers toward him, touching his fur with a trembling hand. "Doggy, please don't leave me," he whispered. Miller swallowed hard. "We're not going anywhere, I promise." But as he shifted to cut the rest of the rope, he noticed deep red marks on his wrist. Fresh, painful, clearly bound tightly for far too long. The knot around his left wrist was tighter than the others, almost embedded into his skin. "Hold still, little man," he said gently, taking out his knife. He cut through the last strands of rope, freeing him completely. The boy winced, but didn't pull away. He stared at the severed rope pieces scattered on the rocks, as if they still had power over him. Miller saw it, the fear that had carved itself deep into his expression, the fear of something more than just the wave. "Who did this to you?" he asked softly. He didn't look at him. Instead, his eyes darted back towards the pier. "Is he still here?" he whispered, his voice barely a breath. "Please don't let him get me." Miller's heart skipped. "Who, little man? Who tied you up?" He hesitated, lips trembling. Then he pointed, not at the precinct, not at the road, but toward the thick mangrove forest beyond the docks. Dark, silent, stretching endlessly. Titan's head snapped up at the same moment. He growled, low, warning, focused. Miller followed his stare, scanning the tree line. He saw nothing, but Titan's instincts had never been wrong. The dog took a step forward, nose twitching rapidly. "There's someone out there," Miller murmured. "Isn't there?" The boy nodded slowly, tears pooling in his eyes. He said the water would take me away forever. A chill tore through Miller. Who would do something so cruel? And were they still watching? Titan barked once, sharp, urgent. Whatever danger lurked in those mangroves, they were not alone. Titan's bark cut through the stillness like a blade. Miller immediately shifted, placing himself between the boy and the tree line. The wind hissed through the branches, carrying with it the faint rustle of movement. Too deliberate, too controlled to be an animal. Miller's hand instinctively went to his holster, fingers tightening around the grip. "Titan, stay close," he whispered. But Titan was already on high alert, his body stiffened, ears pointed forward, tail raised. He sniffed the air, lips pulling back slightly as a low growl vibrated deep in his chest. The Belgian Malinois wasn't just warning them, he was preparing for something. Miller crouched beside the boy again. His tiny body trembled uncontrollably, but his eyes, wide, frightened, remained fixed on the shadowed mangroves. "He said he'd come back," he whispered. "He said if I tried to move, he'd finish what he started." Miller's stomach twisted. You don't have to be scared anymore. I won't let anyone hurt you." But before he could say more, the ground trembled again. Another rumble, another vibration from the water. Miller's eyes widened. "No, not again!" Titan barked loudly, running back onto the shoreline, pacing frantically. His movements were sharp, desperate. He was warning them. A second surge was coming. Miller grabbed his radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Miller. We have a child rescued from the pier. Repeat, child rescued, but another surge is approaching from the east. I need all coastal warnings escalated immediately." Static, a broken voice. "Signal interference, unable to—" The connection cut off. "Damn it," Miller shouted. He scooped the little boy into his arms. "We have to move now." His tiny hands clutched his neck as he bolted across the beach, Titan sprinting beside him. But the ground dipped sharply ahead, and Miller slipped on the loose sand, stumbling forward. He didn't fall, but it slowed him, and the roar blew louder than before, closer. A chilling, thunderous warning that time was nearly up. Miller didn't dare look back. He ran harder, lungs burning, legs screaming with pain. The boy whimpered against him. "It's coming! I hear it! I won't let it touch you," he gasped. Titan raced ahead, then looked back, barking urgently, guiding them toward a shallow dune where they could take cover. Miller angled toward it, mind racing, calculating distance in seconds. The ground vibrated violently. The roar blared again, echoing like a scream through the bay. "Almost," Miller cried. "Just a little more." They threw themselves behind the dune, just as the wave roared past. The noise was deafening. Sand, wind, and water filled the air. The boy clung to him, sobbing. Titan stood over them protectively, barking furiously at the passing water, as if daring the ocean to come any closer. Finally, the last of the surge receded, leaving behind a heavy silence. Miller collapsed back, gasping. The boy lifted his head, eyes glossy with terror. "Deputy," he whispered shakily. "He's still out there." The rumble of the surge faded into the distance, leaving behind an eerie stillness that pressed heavily on the abandoned marina. For a long moment, Deputy Miller just held the boy tightly, trying to slow the frantic pounding of his heart. His breath came in shaky bursts, sweat dripping from his forehead. That was twice. Twice now they had escaped death by seconds. Titan finally relaxed enough to lower his stance, though his ears remained pinned forward, alert and restless. The dog's instinct screamed that the danger wasn't over. Miller knew better than to ignore that. He gently shifted the boy in his arms. "Little man, look at me." His trembling fingers clutched his uniform, refusing to let go. Slowly, he raised his head, revealing wide, fear-clouded brown eyes. Sand streaked his cheeks. His lips quivered. "You're safe," Miller assured him, though even he wasn't sure. "I won't let anything happen to you." The boy swallowed hard. He told me not to scream," he whispered. "But I did. I screamed anyway." Miller's chest tightened. "Who told you that? Who chained you up?" The boy hesitated, then lifted a shaky hand and pointed toward the dark tree line. "The scary man," he said. "If I cry too loud, he'll come back." Titan growled deeply, confirming every word. Miller looked toward the mangroves, his jaw tightening. "Did he tell you his name?" The boy shook his head quickly. "No, but he wore a hood, and he had a big jacket, and he kept looking over his shoulder like someone was following him." Miller exchanged a glance with Titan. This wasn't just a random act. There was planning, intent, and fear. The man had been hiding from someone, or something, and the boy became a pawn in whatever threat he was running from. "What else did he say?" Miller asked softly. He sniffled, hugging himself. He told me to stay still, and then he put a box next to me. A black one. Miller froze. A box? What kind of box? He pointed again, this time toward the area where the pier curved. There, he left it behind the rocks. Titan immediately perked up, sniffing the air. His body stiffened, tail straightening like a rod. He darted forward several steps before looking back, barking sharply. Miller's eyes widened. Was it evidence, a clue, or something far worse? The boy's voice cracked as he whispered. He said the box would make the boat stop. But he didn't put it on the pier, he hid it. Miller felt a chill crawl down his spine. Whatever was inside that box, it wasn't meant to be found. Not by a child. Not by anyone. And Titan had already picked up the scent. Titan darted ahead with powerful strides, nose glued to the ground, tracking the scent with unwavering focus. Miller gently set the boy down on the soft sand, keeping a hand on his shoulder. Stay right here, little man. I'll be back in just a second. He nodded weakly, eyes never leaving the direction Titan had run. Miller followed his canine partner quickly, his boots sinking into sand and dried seaweed. Easy, boy. Slow down, he called. But Titan didn't listen. His training kicked in completely. This was now a search mission. The bend in the pier curved into a narrow, overgrown patch where old shipping containers once rested decades ago. Weeds had swallowed the metal debris, and rusted chains lay scattered like forgotten bones. As Miller stepped closer, the air grew heavier, colder somehow. Titan suddenly stopped. He stood stiff as a statue, tail raised straight, ears pointed sharply forward. A warning. Miller approached carefully. What do you got, partner? Titan growled, pawing at a pile of rocks near the base of an old concrete seawall. Miller crouched, and his breath hitched. Wedged between the stones was a small black pelican case, exactly where the boy said it would be. It wasn't old. It wasn't weathered. It had been placed there recently, deliberately. Miller reached for it, then froze. The latch was partially open, revealing something inside. Dark, metallic, wired. His blood ran cold. A device, not large but unmistakable. Bomb squad, I need bomb squad, he muttered, backing away, but his radio only spat distorted static. Titan barked sharply again, this time turning toward the mangroves. He wasn't just alerting to the case. He sensed movement deeper inside the trees. His fur bristled, and his growl deepened into a sound Miller had only heard when Titan cornered dangerous suspects. Someone was still watching. Miller scanned the trees. For a moment, nothing moved. Then, barely visible, a shadow shifted between the trunks, slow, cautious, deliberately staying low. There, Miller whispered, reaching for his holster. Someone's out there. He took a step toward the trees, and the boy's voice shattered the silence behind him. Deputy. Miller spun around. The boy clutched his stomach, eyes wide with terror. He said if the box was found, he'd come back and finish it, he cried, shaking so hard his knees buckled. Titan barked louder, then bolted toward the mangroves, teeth bared, ready to protect. Miller grabbed the boy's hand and pulled him close. It's okay, I've got you. No one touches you, you hear me? But the forest whispered again. A branch snapped, leaves rustled. Miller drew his weapon. Show yourself, he shouted. The shadow retreated deeper into the mangroves, but not fast, not fearful, almost like he wanted Miller to follow. A trap. Titan paced fiercely at the edge of the tree line, growling toward the darkness, refusing to leave the boy's side despite the threat. Whoever had chained him to the pier was still here, watching, waiting, and the black case. Miller now knew it wasn't meant to stop a boat. It was meant to send a message. Titan stood rigid at the tree line, his growl rumbling low like distant thunder. Miller scanned the shadows beneath a thick canopy, his hand tight around his weapon. The little boy clung to his pant leg, his tiny fingers curling with fear. The air was heavy, too still, too quiet, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. "Titan," Miller murmured. "Take point." The Belgian Malinois moved slowly this time, sniffing the leaves, stepping carefully, guiding them deeper into the mangroves. Miller carried the boy in his arms. He was exhausted, trembling from cold and fear. Every snap of a twig made him jump. After several tense minutes, Titan suddenly halted. His ears perked, his tail stiffened. He looked back at Miller and then ahead. Through the trees, barely visible, sat a small, run-down boathouse. Its roof sagged like it had been beaten by storms. The wood was rotted, the windows broken, the door half-hanging from rusted hinges. It looked abandoned, but Titan's growl told another story. Miller's heart tightened. "This where he took you?" he asked gently. The boy nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the boathouse. "He brought me here first, before the pier." Titan moved closer, sniffing the ground intensely. His posture changed, alert, focused, hunting. He scratched at the dirt near the boathouse's entrance, then lifted his head sharply, barking once. Miller swallowed hard. There was scent. There was activity. Someone had been here recently. He shifted the boy behind him, keeping him close to the trees. "Stay back, little man. Hold on to Titan's harness." He nodded and gripped the dog's side, his knuckles white. Miller stepped onto the creaking walkway. The boards groaned under his weight. He nudged the door with his foot. It swung open slowly, revealing darkness thick as smoke inside. A foul smell seeped out. Dampness, mold, something chemical. "Police," Miller called into the shadows. "If anyone's in here, show yourself." Silence. He lifted his flashlight and entered. The beam cut through dust swirling in the air. Inside, the boathouse was worse than he expected. Broken furniture, scattered clothing, empty cans, and a pile of torn rope on the floor. The same rope used on the boy. But what made his skin crawl was the table in the center. Laid across it were sheets of paper, drawings, plans, maps of the marina, and photographs of the boy, some taken secretly from a distance. Miller felt sick. He moved closer, shining the light over the table, and froze. On the wall behind it, carved with something sharp, were the words, "He was only the beginning." Titan barked outside, sharp and desperate. Miller spun around. The boy screamed. Something or someone was moving in the mangroves again, and this time, they weren't hiding. Miller rushed out of the boathouse, flashlight still trembling in his hand. Titan stood at the tree line, fur bristling, barking with a fury that sent chills climbing up Miller's spine. The little boy hid behind the dog, gripping his harness, his eyes filled with sheer terror. "Where is he?" Miller whispered. Titan lunged forward, pulling against the shadows, nose to the ground, tracing something. Someone. Miller followed slowly, gun raised, heart thundering, his senses sharp as razor wire. The forest felt alive. Every rustle, every breath of wind felt like a warning. Then a silhouette shifted behind a thick trunk. Miller froze. "Police," he shouted. "Step out with your hands where I can see them." Silence. Then a voice, a low, shaky whisper drifted through the trees. "You weren't supposed to find him." Miller tightened his grip on his weapon. "Come out now." A man emerged slowly from behind the trunk. Mid-40s, unshaven, pale, sunken eyes. His clothes were filthy, mud-stained cargo pants and the same heavy coat the boy had described. His right hand twitched at his side. Even from a distance, Miller could see it shaking violently. The boy sucked in a breath. "That's him," he whispered. Rex snarled, teeth bared. Miller stepped forward. "Get on the ground, hands above your head." But the man didn't move. His gaze darted between the boy and Titan, then back to Miller, panicked, unhinged. "You don't understand," he muttered. "This wasn't supposed to happen like this." "Get on the ground," Miller repeated, his voice hardening. The man lifted his hands halfway, palms shaking. "I had no choice." Miller kept the gun trained on him. "What do you mean you had no choice?" The man swallowed, taking a shaky step back. "They were coming for me. I needed time. I needed leverage." Miller's stomach dropped. "The boy, he's a child." The man's breath hitched. His voice cracked. "I wasn't going to hurt him. I swear, the box, the pier, it was just to slow them down." "Slow who down?" Miller snapped. The man hesitated. His eyes flicked toward the dark mangroves. "The people I used to work for. They're worse than you can imagine. I saw something I wasn't supposed to." And then he stopped. His lip trembled. "Then they put my name on the list." Miller felt the weight of the moment shift. This wasn't random. This wasn't madness. This was something far more dangerous. "So you used a little boy," Miller said, voice rising with anger. "You chained him to a pier to send a message." The man's voice cracked again. "I needed them to think I was still useful, that I hadn't run yet." Tears pooled in his hollow eyes. "He was the first child I saw. I didn't want to hurt him." Titan barked, lunging forward, ready to take him down. "Stay!" Miller commanded. The man backed up another step. His heel struck a branch. It snapped loudly. He flinched, then bolted into the trees. "Titan, go track!" Miller shouted. Titan exploded forward, racing after him, teeth bared, paws pounding the ground like gunfire. The chase had begun, and Miller suddenly realized, if this man was telling the truth, the boy wasn't the only one in danger. Many, many more could be next. Titan tore through the forest with incredible speed, dodging fallen branches and weaving between trees with the precision only a trained K9 possessed. Miller sprinted behind him, breath burning, adrenaline crashing through his veins as he followed the sound of Titan's relentless barks. The boy remained safely behind at the boathouse, hidden and guarded by a backup officer who had just arrived after Miller's urgent radio ping. But Miller had no time to rest. Not when the truth was unraveling faster than he could process. Titan's barking echoed ahead, deeper into the forest. Miller pushed harder. "I'm coming, boy! Keep him in sight!" Suddenly, the trees thinned out, opening to a small clearing littered with rusted scrap metal and old boat parts. Titan stood at the edge, growling ferociously at something or someone hidden behind an overturned hull. Miller raised his gun. "Come out! Hands up!" The man crawled out slowly, panting. Dirt smeared across his face, his eyes wild with fear. He fell to his knees, hands shaking above his head. "Don't let them find me," he pleaded. "You have no idea what they'll do." Titan kept barking, but Miller whistled sharply, signaling him to hold. The dog stopped moving forward but didn't lower his guard. Miller stepped closer. "Who are they? Tell me everything." The man coughed, struggled for breath, then finally spoke. "I was a dock worker, a low-level one. Worked for a private shipping contractor that supplies equipment to the Port Authority." Miller's eyes narrowed. "What kind of equipment?" The man swallowed hard. "Signal jammers, tracking beacons, sonar arrays." "They do more than just shipping." He looked up, his voice shaking. "They're planning something big." Miller felt a chill crawl through him. "What does that have to do with the little boy?" "He was never supposed to be in danger," the man blurted out. The case wasn't a bomb. It was a tracker. I needed them to pick up the signal so they'd think I was still working for them. Miller stared at him, stunned. You used a child as bait. I had no choice, the man cried. They were coming for me. They think I stole something. And did you? Miller demanded. The man hesitated long enough to give Miller his answer. Slowly, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small, waterproof ledger, no bigger than a paperback. It was marked with strange symbols and an ID code that made Miller's blood freeze. He recognized that code. It belonged to a classified case file, one involving a sophisticated smuggling ring from months earlier. A case that had gone cold. A case Miller himself had investigated. That's not possible, Miller whispered. You're... The man nodded weakly. I'm the missing witness, the one your department thought skipped town. Miller staggered back, the pieces falling together like shattered glass reforming. This wasn't just a kidnapping. This wasn't just a deranged man on the run. The boy was connected to a much larger plot, a plot targeting the entire coastline, and Titan had led Miller right into the center of it. By the time Miller escorted the captured dock worker back toward the clearing, a squad car had arrived at the edge of the mangroves. 2 deputies waited beside it, one of them holding the little boy in his arms. His tiny face was streaked with tears, his shirt smudged with dirt, his small hands gripping the deputy's collar as if afraid to let go. The moment he spotted Miller, his eyes widened. "Deputy!" he cried, reaching out. Miller hurried over, his heart softening as he practically leaped into his arms. He wrapped himself around him, small arms clinging with desperate relief. You came back, he whispered shakily. You didn't leave me. Miller swallowed hard. I told you I wouldn't. Titan trotted up beside them, his tail wagging gently for the first time since the chaos began. The boy reached down with trembling fingers and stroked the top of his head. Titan leaned in, pressing his nose against his cheek. You saved me too, he said softly to the Belgian Malinois. Titan gave a soft, comforting whine, as if accepting his gratitude. Miller felt the tension inside him finally loosen. For the first time that day, there was warmth in the air instead of fear. Deputies gathered around, offering blankets, water, and soft words of comfort. But just when Miller thought he might finally calm down, a new voice echoed from behind the squad car. A frantic, trembling scream. Leo! Everyone turned. A man sprinted toward them, collapsing to his knees the moment he reached the little boy. He pulled Leo into his arms, sobbing uncontrollably. Son. Oh my God. My son. Leo buried his face in his father's shoulder. Daddy, I was so scared. Miller stepped back, giving them space. The reunion was raw, powerful, exactly the moment every officer prayed to witness after a nightmare like this. The father kissed his son's forehead over and over, tears dripping into his hair. How did you find him? The father managed to ask through sobs. Miller gestured toward Titan. Not me, he said quietly. Him. The man looked down at Titan, tears still falling. He knelt beside him and placed a gentle hand on his fur. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for bringing my son home. Titan lowered his head humbly, his tail thumping once against the sand. Just then, another deputy approached Miller, leaning close. We ran the dock worker's ID through the system, he whispered. You're going to want to hear this. The people he's talking about, they're real, and they've been on our radar. Miller looked back toward the boy and his father. Safe, reunited, alive. But the danger was far from over, and Titan sensed it too. His ears were already turning back toward the forest, listening. The forest had grown eerily quiet again, but Titan's body told a different story. His ears twitched, His nose lifted and his tail stiffened, his instincts sharpening like a blade. Miller noticed instantly. "What is it, boy?" he whispered. Titan didn't bark. He didn't growl. He simply stared deeper into the mangroves, rigid and focused, and that's when Miller heard it too. A faint rustle, the snap of a branch, footsteps, but not clumsy or panicked like the dock workers' earlier attempt to flee. These footsteps were controlled, confident. Someone else was here. A deputy rushed over. "Miller, we just got intel. The dock worker wasn't lying. His former associates were spotted on thermal imaging. 2 individuals moving toward this sector." Miller's blood ran cold. "They're coming to clean up loose ends," he muttered. Before Miller could finish, Titan suddenly lunged forward with a furious bark, sprinting into the mangroves as if shot from a cannon. "Titan, track!" Miller yelled, immediately chasing after him. Deputies followed close behind, weapons raised, their flashlights slicing through the thickening shadows. The forest turned darker as they ran, branches clawing at their uniforms, leaves whispering as if warning them to turn back. Titan led them deeper, weaving through brush, nose to the ground, then lifting to sniff the air. His bark echoed again, urgent, demanding. Miller pushed harder. "Stay with him. Don't lose visual." The chase felt endless until Titan skidded to a sudden stop beside an old industrial catwalk. The structure towered over a murky canal, steel beams rusted and groaning with age, and standing in the center of the catwalk, 2 figures. Miller froze. Both wore dark jackets, both hooded, both staring down at Titan and the deputies with unsettling calmness. One of them held something in his hand, a small remote with a blinking red light. Miller's heart hammered. "Everyone hold. Don't take another step." The taller hooded man raised the device higher. "Looking for your dock worker," he called out, his voice distorted by the wind. "He's caused enough trouble, and so have you." Miller aimed his weapon. "Drop it now!" The hooded man laughed. "It's already armed." Titan barked viciously, inching closer to the catwalk. Miller shouted again, desperation cracking through his voice. "What do you want?" "Silence," the second hooded man replied. "And obedience. The storm won't be the only thing hitting this coast today." Titan didn't wait for orders. With a fierce snarl, he sprinted toward the catwalk. Fast, fearless, unstoppable. "Titan, no!" But the Belgian Malinois wasn't attacking blindly. He was aiming for something specific. The man with the remote stepped back in surprise. "Get that dog away from—" Too late. Titan launched himself forward, teeth clamping onto the man's arm with explosive force. The remote flew from the man's grip, skidding across the catwalk. Chaos erupted. Deputies stormed forward. The second hooded man drew a knife. Miller charged at him, tackling him before the blade could swing. The catwalk shook beneath the struggle, groaning under years of decay and the weight of the fight. The remote teetered on the edge, then fell, splashing into the canal below. Titan held on to the attacker until the man collapsed under the deputy's weight. Miller, panting, looked at Titan, who still stood on the catwalk, chest heaving, eyes fierce with victory. "You saved us again, buddy," Miller whispered. But he didn't know. The biggest revelation of the entire case was about to surface next. The moment the hooded men were wrestled to the ground, the forest fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Deputies cuffed both suspects, dragging them to their knees at the center of the catwalk. Titan stood guard beside Miller, his chest rising and falling with fierce, controlled breaths, ready for anything. Miller crouched in front of the taller suspect, ripping off the black hood. A gaunt face glared back at him, cold eyes, jaw clenched, a mixture of fury and arrogance. "Start talking," Miller ordered. The man only smirked. "You have no idea how late you really are." Miller's jaw tightened. "We stopped your detonator. Your plan failed." But the man laughed, soft at first, then louder, echoing through the metal beams of the catwalk. That wasn't the plan, he hissed. That device was nothing, a placeholder. Titan growled deeply, inching closer. Miller grabbed the man by the collar. Then what was your plan? The man jerked his chin toward the captured dock worker being escorted through the mangroves. Ask your little runaway. He stole the real prize. Without it, none of this works. Miller glanced toward the dock worker, shaking, exhausted, his terror clearer now than ever. The second hooded man finally spoke, his voice low and bitter. We weren't going to hurt the boy. He was leverage, bait to lure him back, to make him return what he stole. Miller's stomach twisted. You chained a child to appear as leverage. He was never in danger from us, the second man muttered. The dock worker made it worse, panicked. He thought we'd kill him the moment we found him. Miller turned back to the first man. What is this prize? What were you trying to do? A long pause. Then the man smiled, a slow, chilling smile. It's a manifest for every container in the port for the next month, he said. Shipments, routes, security codes. One data transfer and the entire port is ours. Accidents, chaos, perfect cover for moving what we needed. Miller's blood ran cold. You were planning a diversion. A beautiful one, the man whispered. Miller stepped back, his breath tightening. And the boy? He saw us during a field test, the man said. Saw the case, saw the equipment. We couldn't let him talk. Titan lunged forward, barking with explosive rage. Miller restrained him just in time. You're done, Miller growled. Both of you. The man's smile faded. For the first time, fear crept into his eyes. Deputies dragged the suspects away, their wrists bound, their twisted plan collapsing into dust. Miller looked at Titan. The dog's eyes met his, sharp, alert, ready. And that's when Miller realized this wasn't just a rescue. Titan had prevented a catastrophe. But the biggest truth, the one no one expected, was still waiting to be revealed in the final chapter. The forest slowly returned to silence as the suspects were taken away, their footsteps fading into the distance. Miller exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. He placed a hand on Titan's back, feeling the steady rise and fall of the dog's breath. Titan didn't relax. His ears still twitched, his eyes still scanning the shadows. But he stayed close, ever watchful. The dock worker stood a few steps away, arms wrapped around himself, trembling. Deputies surrounded him, ready to escort him back to safety. But before they moved, he looked at Miller with a haunted expression. There's something else you need to know, he murmured. Miller frowned. More than planned port takeovers? More than child endangerment? The dock worker shook his head slowly. They weren't just planning a data heist. They were planning a transfer, a shipment, something they wanted moved without anyone noticing. Miller crossed his arms. Moved where? The man hesitated, then pointed towards the coast. Offshore. Miller stared at him. What? There's an old sea cave beneath the bluffs, the dock worker explained, his voice trembling. It was sealed by a rock slide decades ago, but they opened it again. They've been using it to store the shipment and something else. Titan suddenly lifted his head. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Miller stiffened. What's down there? The dock worker swallowed, his voice cracking as he answered. Teens. Miller's blood ran cold. Not hurt, the man added quickly. Just held for transfer. They were going to move them during the chaos of the port shutdown. No one would have noticed a boat leaving the marina during a mass coastal emergency. Miller's mind spun. How many? 4, the dock worker whispered. 4 teenagers, all taken from neighboring towns, all reported missing. Titan barked loudly, tugging at Miller's sleeve, pulling him toward the coast, the same direction the little boy had been found. Miller didn't hesitate. Within minutes, deputies swarmed the location the dock worker described. Hidden under driftwood and tangled nets was a narrow fissure in the rock face, half covered by sand and old pier parts. Titan sniffed aggressively around the edges of the opening, whining, pawing, desperate. "Get it open," Miller ordered. It took 3 deputies to clear it. A harsh grating sound echoed through the air as the rocks moved, releasing a gust of cold, stale air. Miller shined his flashlight into the cave. 4 young faces stared back, terrified, confused, but alive. "We're police," Miller called in. "You're safe now. We're getting you out." Titan barked, his tail wagging for the first time that day, as if telling the teenagers they weren't alone anymore. The rescue was swift. Deputies climbed in, helping each teen back to the surface. They clung to Miller and Titan, some crying, some too shocked to speak. One girl whispered, "We heard the waves. We thought we were going to be trapped forever." Miller knelt beside them, his heart tightening. "Not on my watch," he said softly, "and definitely not on his." He nodded toward Titan. The teens reached out to the dog. Titan leaned in gently, letting their hands rest on his fur. Hours later, as ambulances and patrol cars filled the area, Miller stood beside Titan, watching the teens reunite with their families. Tearful mothers, shaking fathers, joy bursting through agony. The little boy, Leo, approached him with his father's hand in his. He knelt beside Titan, hugging him tightly. "You didn't just save me," he whispered. "You saved them, too." Titan nudged him gently, his eyes soft, Miller's chest filled with pride. "He's a hero," he said quietly. Leo smiled. "No, he's an angel." As the sun dipped behind the waves, Miller looked at Titan. The dog who sensed danger before any human could. The dog who ran toward fear, not away. The dog who saved lives without hesitation. This wasn't just bravery. This was destiny. And the truth was shocking. Not because of the danger they faced, but because a single police dog changed the fate of so many innocent lives.